My kids are fish. Anytime we get near any kind of body of water, they jump right in and start swimming around. They especially love the ocean. They demand that we take them there every summer, and then they spend every second of every day swimming and swimming and swimming and swimming and swimming in the ocean. I always assume they got that from their father because that is not me. I don't swim. I love the ocean. I love listening to the sound of the waves crashing on the shore. I love the smell of the sea. I love watching the sun rise over the ocean here on the East Coast. But I don't go in the water. And I'm pretty sure I got that from my father. My father loved the ocean so much that he bought the house that I grew up in at the Jersey Shore. My father loved the ocean so much that every time we'd go on vacation in the summer, he would take us to a beach, and it was near the ocean. And yet, in all of his life, I never saw him go in to the water. But it's especially ironic because my last name, my maiden last name, my father's last name is Piscitelli. And if you don't know, in the old tongue, that means little fish. Now, my little fish, my kids, they love going in the ocean and they demand that I take them there every summer. And last summer was no different, except last summer was very busy. It was a long, hard-working summer, and we didn't really make it to the beach before summer was over, but we did make it to the beach after the season, which actually worked out because it wasn't quite as expensive as it normally is. So we got there one Friday afternoon. My husband and I had taken our days off of work, but even though we had taken the day off of work, as soon as we got there, my husband was like, I have to work. And so I took the kids to the beach by myself, which in retrospect wasn't the smartest thing to do, but they're great swimmers. So I put down our blankets and our pile of crap, and it was, after the season, after 4 p.m., there was no one on the beach. It was just us. And so I stood at the edge of the water watching the kids jump over the waves and swim under the waves and ride the waves and just swim and swim and swim and swim, and everything was fine until it wasn't. Until it was almost like a scene out of Jaws or The Meg, it's been in both movies, where the kids just suddenly looked like they were getting pulled away from me, pulled away and down the beach rapidly. And I started running along the beach, calling out to them, all right, kids, come in, swim in, come back to shore. And they started screaming back at me, we can't. And they were flailing and they were crying. And I realized that they were caught in a riptide. So I called out to them, don't struggle, just stay afloat, just float. And it it wasn't a good idea. I don't swim, but there was no one else around. So I went in after my kids. I wasn't going to let them go. And I went into the water the way I go into the ocean on my feet. I walked, and the waves crashed against me, tried to push me back onto the beach, and I pushed through, and then they started crashing over my head, and then I went under, and I just felt like I was gonna drown, but I wasn't gonna let my kids go. So I cried out to whatever God would listen, and I guess Jupiter answered because suddenly I found this strength that I didn't know I had. I found this ability that I didn't know I had, and I began to swim. And I swear I put Michael Phelps to shame. Every pull of my arm brought me closer. Every push with the tail end of my body propelled me forward. And in moments, I had caught up to my children. And even though I don't swim, even though I had never even thought about taking a lifeguard class, I caught up to my kids. They were still afloat, obviously, thank God. And I wrapped one of them under one arm and the other under the other arm. And with some sort of unknown power, I held their heads above the water and I kicked us back to shore. And we stepped onto the beach, one foot in front of the other. And my kids were crying and they were shaking, and I wouldn't let them go as we began the walk back to the towels, to our hotel. It had been maybe 10 minutes, and we had been pulled nearly a mile. And I didn't really think about anything in that moment other than comforting my kids because they were shaken. But I did have the thought of how strange that whole thing had been. And the thought that came to me in that moment was it's kind of like those, those docu-series that you see, or those USA Today articles that you see about the people who their friend is trapped under a car and they somehow find the strength to lift that car off of them. I thought it must have been something like that. I was a mom. I was desperate. I figured it out. Well, normally, when we go to the beach, the kids want to spend every second in the ocean, but the next morning, hmm, they didn't want to get near the water. So we distracted them. We took them out to play mini golf. We went to the movies. We bought them ice cream. We bought them crabs. We bought them more ice cream. We avoided the giant body of water just outside our hotel window. But normally, that's like my favorite part of being near the ocean is all the other stuff, not the water. But something had changed in me. And that whole day, I had felt this pull, this calling, if you will. And I kept finding myself looking out in the direction of the sea, wanting to go. Well, again, we were leaving on Sunday, and normally that meant that we would stay until it was dark, and then we would ride home in our wet bathing suits sitting on towels. But I knew the kids were not going back in the water this trip. I knew that we would be leaving as soon as they woke up Sunday morning. So Sunday morning when I woke up, just before sunrise, I couldn't fight it anymore. I walked out onto the beach. I looked out at the ocean. I stripped off my clothes, left them in the sand, and walked into the sea. And the waves didn't crash into me. They wrapped around me. They embraced me, welcomed me. And I dove beneath them. And I was transformed. Every kick with my tail propelled me up and down and around. Every swish of my fins, I was twisting and turning, and I was home in the same waters that connected us here on the East Coast to my ancestors' land. And I felt such an overwhelming feeling of belonging that I really thought about never leaving the water. But then it was as if I felt these two hooks stuck into my heart, this lines pulling me back to shore. And I realized that I couldn't leave my children. So as hard as it was, as much as I felt like I was leaving a piece of my heart behind, I swam back to the beach and I stepped one foot in front of the other onto the sand. I went back to my family, and my family and I drove to our home. It's been a year, and the kids haven't been craving the sea. They haven't been bugging us for that beach vacation. I need to go back. And we will soon. It's been another long summer, but we'll get there. And I'm really looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to convincing the kids, showing them that it's okay to go back in the water. And and I'm looking forward to the ice cream and the crabs, and I'm looking forward to standing with my toes in the sand and listening to the waves crash. But more than anything, what I am looking forward to is once again swimming with the fishes.